The Fog of Bias, Dr. Indira Rampersad and the PNM Leadership Debate. Dr. Indira Rampersad's recent analysis of the PNM's leadership restructuring attempts to pass as neutral political commentary, but when examined closely, it becomes apparent that it is layered with subtle antagonism, selective criticism, and veiled cynicism, factors that cast a long shadow over her credibility as a political analyst. She refers to the previous arrangement, where Dr. Keith Rowley stepped down as Prime Minister but retained the position of political leader while appointing Stuart Young as Prime Minister, as an experiment that backfired badly and one that did not work out. These phrases, dripping with finality, imply failure and ridicule rather than impartial analysis. But here's the glaring omission: Dr. Rampersad never contextualizes the circumstances under which Rowley made this transition. After over 8 years in office, during one of the most turbulent global periods, marked by COVID-19, rising inflation, and geopolitical disruptions, Rowley's decision to begin a succession process, however unconventional, was not made in a vacuum. It was an attempt to prepare the party for generational leadership transition, something that is rarely attempted in Caribbean politics without fierce internal resistance. Instead of offering a balanced exploration of the challenges inherent in leadership handovers, Rampersad leaps to an absolutist conclusion that it was a personal misjudgment by Rowley, not a collective party strategy. She then poses a rhetorical question that reveals far more than she likely intended. Was this a party-wide decision or just Rowley's personal experiment? That line alone betrays her entire framing. It's a classic tactic: pose an inflammatory question with no intent of answering it, but leave the reader with a seeded doubt, one designed not to inform but to provoke suspicion. Moreover, she warns ominously that separating the roles of political leader and prime minister, or, in this case, opposition leader, can create division, factionalism, and competing camps within the party. This is rich, coming from a commentator who has for years promoted internal democracy and inclusivity in political structures. When did having checks, balances, and internal debate become a liability? Since when did factionalism automatically equal dysfunction? In many modern democracies, internal debate is a sign of health, not decay. Rampersad's framing shifts again when addressing the April 28 general election, which she describes as a devastating defeat that forced the party into introspection. She portrays the PNM not as adapting or evolving, but as limping to survival. Yet, she offers no substantive analysis of the socio-economic factors that contributed to the party's defeat: rising cost of living, a restless youth population, and a global wave of anti-incumbency sentiment. Instead, the blame is laid squarely at the feet of leadership and, more specifically, Rowley. This kind of single-variable analysis is not political science. It's partisan reductionism. More telling, however, is what Dr. Rampersad does not say. The PNM is now moving toward internal elections on June 22nd, using the one-man, one-vote principle, a process that allows every financial member to have a voice in choosing their political leader. This is not a symbolic gesture. It is a significant shift toward democratization in a party historically criticized for top-down leadership. Rampersad briefly acknowledges this change but frames it as a late-stage correction rather than a proactive move toward internal reform. This sleight of hand glosses over the fact that this is one of the most open internal leadership elections in the party's history, a fact that should be lauded regardless of political affiliation. She also avoids addressing the reality that many political parties in Trinidad and Tobago, and across the Caribbean, still rely heavily on hand-picked successors, special conventions, or internal elite bargaining. Stuart Young's temporary elevation, though controversial, was at least transparent. He faced the electorate. He led a campaign. The people responded. And that is democracy. But Rampersad chooses to focus not on democratic outcomes, but on hypothetical consequences. What could have happened had the PNM won? This is not analysis grounded in reality. It's speculative fearmongering. Adding to the chorus, Professor Hamid Ghani described the dual leadership structure as risky and complicated, warning it created a double-headed system that confused the electorate. This might be true, but it also ignores that leadership transitions are always messy. Few are ever smooth. What matters is whether lessons are learned and the structure is adjusted, and that is precisely what the PNM is now doing. Instead of crediting that process, Rampersad reinforces the idea that the party is unstable and disorganized, all while ignoring the deeper political maturity required to publicly course correct. Even within the PNM, frustration has emerged, with some members voicing concerns about arrogance, detachment, and unfulfilled promises. Rampersad amplifies these voices, but only selectively. Where is her critique of similar fractures in the UNC, where leadership succession has remained frozen for nearly 2 decades? Where was her voice when key UNC members resigned in protest, citing lack of internal democracy and disrespect from the top? Her silence then is as loud as her critique now. The truth is, Rampersad's narrative is not about political reform or party health. It's about crafting a storyline where the PNM is perpetually on the brink, and where Dr. Rowley's every move is interpreted as either hubris or desperation. That isn't objective commentary. That's political theater masquerading as scholarship. To those who follow Caribbean politics, this is not new. Rampersad has often walked a thin line between academic and advocate, cloaking strong political opinions in the language of detached analysis. But when one scratches the surface, the bias reveals itself. In this instance, she is less interested in guiding public understanding than she is in undermining confidence in a party undergoing necessary and difficult reforms. Let's be clear, the PNM's leadership choices are not above scrutiny. No political party is. But what we expect, what we deserve, is commentary that is consistent, historically grounded, and fair. Not a calculated hit piece disguised as analysis. In the final analysis, Dr. Rampersad's portrayal of the PNM is not just critical, it is curiously one-sided. Her omissions speak louder than her words. And her nebulous framing, full of speculative doom, is not a reflection of the state of the PNM, but a reflection of the state of her own objectivity. The people of Trinidad and Tobago are not pawns in a political analyst's narrative arc. They deserve better.